All right, guys, just did the little road trip down the driveway, down the road and back, and success. Corvette's back on the Stalker Vert, 225 40/18, 285 30/18, 8.5 inch in the front, 10 inch in the rear, and I think we got that fitment squared away. Really nice. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the infamous project. Exciting day here because we are going to get Corvette's back on the Stalker Vert. So if you guys remember, I did a full QA1 suspension setup on the car, and the reveal of it was actually on a set of 18 inch by 10, a square setup, so 18-10 all the way around with 255 35 18 inch tires, and the odds that are now on this one side of my silver notch. So I did all the test fitting and everything else that was required to make sure that they would fit and that they would work with the right offsets so that they could ultimately live on the silver notch. Now, the ROH Modenas, which are now on the driver's side of the Stalker Vert here, kind of wedged next to the E39 M5, those are obviously coming off, and they're going to be put on the shelf for now. My good friend Lewis with the Teal 93 Cobra has been on me for them. I don't know if I want to let them go yet. They look great on this car, and kind of that magnesium center right against the silver looked pretty cool, but I wanted to go a little bit more Euro with this car, right? That whole SL500 Benz look that we saw when they were on the Stalker Vert here. And yeah, they just fit so well, so snug, so tight. And that is not a spacer in there, nothing. That's just the straight up offsets of those wheels working with the rolled fenders, the suspension, and everything else that's on that car. Now, similarly, I've been trying to go through some iterations here. This is not the set of Corvettes that were on the Stalker Vert to begin with. This is another set that actually has polished lips that are absolutely filthy at this moment because, well, the tires just got mounted on here, and of course I've been touching everything with my dirty, greasy hands, trying to get everything fitting and working, which I have come up with the solution that I need for the setup on the Stalker Vert. Now, one thing that I want to touch on is that people post pictures of wheels on their cars on Facebook or wherever it might be, and everyone's like, oh man, what is your setup? What are the offsets? What are the tire sizes? It really means nothing because, guys, there is so much that goes into wheel fitment, tire fitment, the look, the stance, and everything because everybody's car is different. Now, fox bodies in general are different, right? We've heard the stories about the rear ends, right? Sometimes they're a little closer to one side than they are the other side. They're not properly centered from factory, so on and so forth. But that's just the smallest little thing. The big game changers that come with fox bodies is, well, which spindles are in the front? What K-member is in the front? Which control arms are in the front? Because if you got a pre-87 car, you're going to have a narrower K-member, which means you're going to have more of an offset inward in your car. If you have a SN95 lower control arm, you're going to have more poke down in the bottom. That results in more camber. What spindles, if you're running 94, 95, you got 3 millimeters of additional poke. If you're running 96 and above, you got 9 millimeters of additional poke. And in the rear, you got SN95 axles with 3/4 of an inch poke. Do you have an IRS with 1 1/4 inch? Or what is it, the Turbo Coupe or whatever the other rear end was that is 1 1/4 inch poke on the rear? All of those things come into play when you're talking about wheel offsets. So if you ask somebody, well, what's their offset? It might not matter at all in your application or help you out. In fact, you might take their word for it and you might end up in a hard place of, well, your wheels don't fit the way that you want them to. So that's just the wheel fitment thing. Guys, we all talk about stance, we talk about poke, we talk about all these things, and that terminology is different dependent on kind of what flavor of enthusiast you are. Because if you talk about stance and poke for a Euro car, completely different meanings than typically what people would define as stance on a fox body. So One thing that is for sure, and that I am happy to see, is more people are finally starting to understand the wheel should be as flush as you can get it with the side of your car. If you've got dish and you got a lip, you want to show that thing off from that side profile so you can see those barrels and everything else that you're trying to show off. It's not about sticking a bunch of tire outside of your rear quarter panel or outside of your fenders, which is something completely different. We got wire wheel fitment out there. You can see the tires are clearly poking outside of the fenders, and that's okay because that is the style that belongs with that setup. Similarly here, right? This car, we could have a little bit more flushness, if you will. However, I didn't want to roll the lips on this car. This car is too clean and minty. I didn't want to do any rolling. If I knew then what I know now, I probably would not have rolled the lips on my silver notch, but it's my silver notch. That thing isn't going anywhere. So it is what it is. It allowed me to fit 18 by 10s all the way around, and the fitment couldn't be any better. So let's talk about the stalker vert here. Sometimes we end up with wheels that we got to get creative in order to make them fit. And I've talked about this before. The Borbettes here are actually Mercedes fitment. They are 5x112. A Mustang, which with a 5-bolt conversion is 5x114.3. So that's 2.3 millimeters, which is like not very much. In other words, those wheels will slide on to the lugs, but the problem is the lugs are not centered in the lug bores of the wheels. So you end up with a situation where the lugs are going to be kind of rubbing against the edges of all the holes. Well, how do we fix that? Well, there's two options. You could have the wheels re-drilled so that they could work with that bolt pattern, right? The yellow Dutch, those were 5x120 wheels. I had them filled and drilled, so all the lug holes were welded up, filled up. PCD pattern got re-drilled, which is 4x108. That's actually still a 4-bolt car. So that is one way of doing it. But when we only got 2.3 millimeters of difference, well, that's where these guys come into play. And I've spoken about these before. These are PCD variation nuts. So your PCD is your 5x112, okay? And by having a variation nut, you can see how the cone, right, that sits in here, it can shift, and it can shift up to 2.5 millimeters, which means even though that lug might be sitting up against the side of the one wall, well, this cone is going to shift and allow the wheel to get centered properly as it should, so you don't end up with any vibrations. Now, the next thing that I had to do, these hub bores were 66 millimeters on these wheels, which means they would not fit the standard 70.5 hub bore that an SN95 spindle is. So what does that mean? That means these wheels went to the machine shop and this hub opening was opened up. So, right? Now we're getting into the modification and the tricks and everything else that we need in order to make these wheels fit. So opened up the hub bore, we got PCD variation nuts. Now the last piece of the puzzle is the offset. Now the offset of this guy is, it's looking like an ET18. So this is an 18 millimeter offset on an 8.5 inch wheel. If the wheel was a 9 inch or a 10 inch, like the rear, that 18 is going to mean something different than on that wheel versus this wheel in terms of the fitment, because the wheel's wider on the 10-inch wheel. So I think the 10s, if I remember correctly, are ET19. Oh, actually, I take that back. ET25. I think I'm getting them confused with those wheels over there. In order to run these wheels on that car with the spindles and the K-member and the control arms and the rolled fender lips and everything else that exists, I need this in order to get the wheel to sit where I want it to. Otherwise, the wheel's going to sit way in. You can sort of see how far this wheel is sitting in right now. It's way too far in there. And that's because, well, the offset is not near as aggressive enough that we need it to be. And you can see on this side, wheel and tires real nice and close to the fender. So that's right, guys, be bolting on adapters. Now, one thing that you could do is you could get a custom adapter made where you bolt this onto your hub. So this would be, right, 5x114.3, bolt that on. And then this could be whatever bolt pattern with a, right, hub ring on here that you need. So technically I could have got this made to a 5x112 bolt pattern. These wheels would have fit on here perfectly, but then I'd end up with something that's 5x112 in the front, 5x114 with variation nuts in the back. So I wanted to keep everything, I guess, consistent. So this is 5x114 on the hub side, 5x114 on the lug side, and we're going to use PCD nuts front and rear, and everything's going to be good. Now, another thing that's important to keep in mind, this car has most likely either a Ranger or Aerostar axles, which has a smaller hub bore than, right, it would have been the 60, what's a Fox, 63, 66, something like that. So these rings will go on the hub on the rear and take up the space so that the wheels can sit center on the hub, and that will help reduce vibrations. I talked about these when I was going to pits with the yellow car. A lot of information, a lot of blabbing. The passenger side is good to go on the car. The car hasn't moved in a while. I'm probably gonna have to use a little Noco pack. I got to move this T-trim blower and this Novi 2000 blower setup out of the way. That's been sitting down here on the ground. Pull the car forward, get it up on some 2x4s so we can actually get the jack under it, and we will get the driver's side bolted up, and then hopefully do a, I guess, a final new reveal of the Stalker Vert back on Borbets. The nice thing about a convertible, they have reinforced pinch welds, which means when your car is super low, like the Stalker Vert, it's actually easy to get the jack under it. And it's almost like a BMW. You can get the front and the rear up with one jack. Alright guys, so the adapter is pretty easy. It's already hub centric, so the hub, like this, is centered on the hub, and we have another hub ring here which keeps everything 70.5. And you don't want to go crazy with your impact. We'll there you go, stick the little screwdriver in here, and we're going to torque these down. So your adapters are usually 90 to 100 foot-pounds. Hope if I get the right size on there. If you look closely, you can see how these studs aren't 100% centered, right? So that's where our variation nuts come into place, as they are going to make sure that it centers the wheel the way that we want it. So close. We will take it down the driveway and back. And if everything checks out all right, clean up the wheels and put the center caps on. All right, guys, just did the little road trip down the driveway, down the road and back, and success. Corvette's back on the Stalker vert. 225 40/18, 285 30/18, 8.5 inch in the front, 10 inch in the rear, and I think we got that fitment squared away. Really, really nice. There you guys have it, a little bit of a random video. Just wanted to wrap this up before Easter weekend here and say that I got the Corvettes back on the car and got the tires to fit and everything to work the way that I wanted it. Had to do a little bit of massaging to the front fenders and the rear quarters there, but that's all part of the game. So now you can see why I wanted to test fit everything on this car before putting those Oz wheels on the silver car, because I don't mind massaging things on a car that's an ongoing project and forever R&D, if you will, versus something that's minty and fresh. I'm not going to experiment on that. So take notes of that, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Until next time, we'll see you back here on the Infamous Project.